minute, guys. Maybe there's some stuff up there for us. Maybe there's some stuff that we can keep from the outsiders.
Lots of
maybe there's some rich stuff.
Rich
no,
stuff.
rich stuff.
Welcome, everybody. We are back after a really long break with the Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Team podcast known as Mission Statements. I am Andy Katz, and I think one of the reasons we've been away for so long is that a lot of us have been really busy visiting locations all over planet Earth, and I can't think of a better reason to have gone on a hiatus. But we have kind of amassed several stories and met several people that we really want to showcase and highlight on the podcast. And today we have a guest. I believe he's from Canada. I hope that's the case. And but like a lot of us, he doesn't stay there. He runs around and he travels and he finds places all over the place. His name is Dave. He runs and operates an account called Freaktography, and I know very little about it other than what I've seen on his Instagram account, which is very cool. And I wanted to let him tell how he goes about finding locations and maybe share a little bit of what he's done since I've sort of been starting to follow him, which was recently in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, maybe tops. And I've seen him recently do some pretty great things where he visited New York City and the surrounding boroughs and hit a lot of locations that I am quite fond of. So without further ado, Dave from Freaktography, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I wanted to ask you to just tell us how you got into this community, and then I kind of want to remind myself how we came to know each other a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. So when you say community, I guess there's a couple of different communities that I'm working my way into here. One is the urban exploration community in the sense of abandoned buildings and breaking into abandoned buildings, taking pictures. And then more recently, I'm getting into the more into your area of like pop culture and photographing interesting sites of pop culture, music, historical significance. And that's how we came to find each other. I'm always looking for something to do. I'm always looking for the next thing I can try, So for the last 12 years, I've been almost exclusively doing abandoned buildings and urban exploration. And every once in a while, I'll branch out to something like astrophotography or something different. But I'm always, like I said, I'm always looking for the next idea. But what sucks is nothing's new anymore, right? And I had this awesome idea to take where album covers were photographed and visit them. And I'm like, man, that's a good idea. Guaranteed somebody else is doing it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'm really glad you brought up the urban exploration part of this, because we are called Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Team, and I know initially that was the real idea, was to visit abandoned places or places that had been condemned, or you have to sort of hop a fence to get into and find what's like the steel rusty beams and things that were discarded or left behind. And there's not a lot of that to find, frankly, if you're not, unless you're near a city or a town that was sort of abandoned. And that's what's really, to me, very compelling about your account, is that you have managed to find some pretty fantastic spots that have been abandoned, a lot of funeral homes and houses, and just that there's a real I don't know, excitement about what you've been able to find once you've gone in the houses. Like, I was just looking at your Instagram account, and I saw you found a pile of Elvis Presley trading cards. And I thought, that's really cool. I mean, it'd be one thing if they're worth a lot of money. That's sort of beside the point. But the fact that they were left there in sort of its natural state, I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, that's probably one of the more interesting things that I've discovered. And I don't take things, so they're hopefully still there where I left them. A lot of people are like, God damn it, you should have took them because they're worth money or they should be in a museum. But in any case, what was interesting about that and some of the other things that I've found is my background in life is music and pop culture. And my interest in abandoned buildings, from what I think, stems from the Michael Jackson Thriller video. When I was 10 years old and that video came out, and the abandoned house and how creepy it was, I always think back to that video. And so from the time I was 10, I've been into music and pop culture and stuff like that. So when I'm exploring and I find records, or I once found a house that had a teenage girl's bedroom from the 1980s, plastered with posters and magazine pictures of like whatever was going on in the mid 1980s. It had everything on the wall, Michael J. Fox, all that kind of stuff. And when I find things like the Elvis cards, or when I find records or something, it's like my two sort of passions in life coming together, and that's kind of where this has led me now. And why we're talking is, again, getting into the area of visiting sites of significance within pop culture. And when I'm in abandoned buildings, there's a certain history element. You're feeling history, you're guessing, what happened here? What went on in this room? And you're sort of visualizing things and making a story in your own head. But when I go to Brooklyn and I'm standing in front of Biggie's house and I'm like, I know exactly what the fuck went on right here because I've seen it and I lived it. Or when I'm walking through Hollis, Queens and I see where Run DMC were hanging out, I'm like, I've seen this. I know exactly what went on in this alley, and I can actually picture it. And I guess it's an interest in history, and being where something great happened, and I guess that's kind of, I'm kind of intertwining my two sort of passions with exploration and travel and music and pop culture and stuff like that.
Oh man, well, I couldn't have said it any better. That's exactly my whole sort of philosophy on all of this. And I love that you're talking about how they're sort of intertwining because like I remember when you and I first connected and you're like, I know you just mostly do hip hop stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I stopped you right there. I was like, yeah, I do. But, because what you said about everything being intertwined, I mean, recently I've been going to New York a lot, taking like day trips up there. And I've hit a lot of the spots that everybody knows about. So now, like you said, it's like the challenge is to try to find something new. I mean, a lot of the things are old, but they're new because people don't know the information or they don't know the story. So I just went on a trip that I'm really excited about, and I started this new investigation based on my favorite painters, my favorite artists.
Yeah,
and so I did a whole day and a whole trip about the artist Edward Hopper, who painted Nighthawks. And of course, like you said, I mean, I'm not discovering anything. There's a lot of people who have done what I've done in some manner, whether they've written a paper or a story about a certain building, or they've created their own website, or they wrote a blog. So the fun part is, for me, those are all breadcrumbs that I can kind of pick up, and then I can do my own story and my own angle. Because, a lot of the places you visited in Hollis, and I mean, I one of my favorite things I've ever done was called In Search of Run DMC. It was a video that we did on YouTube. I hope that you've seen it. And oh, great. And so that was me discovering what other people knew about. But that day I was discovering it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm here. Like you said, it's that overlap of history and pop culture and music and also visual art, because I came home and I ended up painting the image that Glenn Friedman had taken a picture of. So there's a lot of overlap, and it's such a rich feeling because I feel like, what we're doing, a byproduct of what we're doing is we're perpetuating the history and the music. And people aren't going to forget about it if we keep bringing it to the forefront. And so it doesn't matter how many people have hit things. This comes up a lot. There's some people that are very proprietary, like I found it and I did this, and it's like, all right, great. But our group is sort of known for sharing addresses and telling people where to go. And actually that brings it sort of back to you. One of the things I remember about you introducing yourself to me was you kind of came with like a peace offering. You're like, hey, if you ever get up to Detroit, here's this M&M picture.
Yeah.
You want to take it from there and tell us about that experience, because that was recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was within the last couple of months. And yeah, it's funny how you mentioned that, because in my world of abandoned buildings, it's the same way. Like if somebody finds a really good abandoned building, they don't want to share it with anybody.
Yeah.
And they want to keep it to themselves in their small circle of friends. But for me, and I'll get to your point in a minute, but I was looking at your Instagram, and I was looking at the band was here, Steve's account on Instagram. And a lot of the places I went, I picked up breadcrumbs from you guys. And so I'm like, naturally, I'm going to say, listen, Andy, your account was a huge help to me. Let me give back. Here's a couple things that you not have, because I've not seen anybody else do it. I made the same offer to somebody else who's very prolific in this, and he wouldn't take it. His answer was, I prefer to find my spots on my own. Oh, all right, that's fine. But we talk of another point I wanted to make was we talk about so many other people doing the same idea, but it's how you present it, right? Like you have a way of presenting that's proprietary, as you'd say, and specific to you and your style, as with Steve. And the same with me. I'm not just taking a picture and moving it and then showing them now. I'm narrating a story, and I'm calling it, and the rest was history, because I'm trying to, and it's pretty much every place that we're finding is from before, right? When the Beastie Boys were early, when Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five were just getting started, and then the rest is history from that point on.
That's right.
So it's how you present it in your own special way. It's kind of like being a comedian. There are only so many jokes going around. It's how you present it.
I think that's a great comparison. Yeah, I think that's really true. And it's funny you bring up the band played here, because and it's also funny that you bring up that idea of like, I'll find things myself, because as much as I love sharing the information, there was a location I found within the last month in New York City in Central Park that I knew Steve had found from the band played here. The band was here, and I was so determined not to ask him for help. I was like, I really want to find. It was like a matter of pride, and I knew that he would probably have been cool. He doesn't know me, but I think he knows my page, and he knows about Delta Bravo. But it was going to be a last resort, and it was a needle in a haystack. It was Nirvana on a pile of rocks in the middle of Central Park.
Pile. Right.
Well, that's just it, right? I had been there 3 or 4 times over the past 3 or 4 years, and I didn't spend hours and hours and hours scouring the place, but it's such a big place, and I could get away. I could get away for an hour or two and look, and I was just looking in the wrong place. And it was very frustrating, because there wasn't a lot to go on. But ultimately we did find it, and I was and the first thing I did was I think I thanked him on my post when I finally found it, because I was proud that I didn't have to ask for help. So
it's funny, because when I was in Brooklyn, I went to the Cypress Hill Cemetery, and I got those pictures of Biggie, and I messaged you, because I'm looking at the picture of Biggie in front of the graves, and the ones I was in front of weren't lining up. The space in between the tombstones was too far from the picture. So I'm like, where is this? Like, I'm there. I'm at the veterans section, and they're all too new. None of these are the spot. So I'm like you. I'm determined to find it without asking. And then I asked you, do you have any idea? And you didn't. And then I messaged Steve, I said, I'm here. I'm at Cypress Hill Cemetery, and I'm at the veterans section, and I cannot find it. I said, you don't need to tell me exactly where, but maybe like a hint that I can run with. I hadn't heard back from him. Then I realized that there's another section in the cemetery with similar graves. So I found it, and then he got back to me after I had already found it. So luckily I did find it without anybody's help.
Yeah, because I remember I sent you I actually sent you Jimmy Ferrari's description from Facebook that had some detail. And I haven't been to that spot. I want to go, and I was sort of basing my findings on what Jimmy found. So there's a lot of, it's just, to me, it's great because I know why people don't want to ask for help. I've been there. I totally, but I also really do like when people are excited to help because they want you to find it. They want you to be there too. And I think that's what makes this community so appealing, because there's definitely a downside, and I actually think there's some groups right now that have gotten so big that the administrators are taking some of the fun out of it because they're down on people who are posting things that have already been found. So like for instance is like, oh yeah, we know where the Home Alone house is. 1 million people have been there. But you know, if you've never been there and you've never been to that city and you go there and you love that movie, they should be happy for you, you know?
Exactly.
And I don't know, like I don't live I live in Maryland, so the things that I take for granted might be DC and Baltimore. And if someone comes through here who's never been to Baltimore and they love the show The Wire, I would be thrilled to help them find spots because I know where a lot of them are. And I also had one story was I had a white whale where I could not find this one building. And there's a great lady named Erin who lives out in Sacramento, California. And one of her favorite things to do is help people like me find a spot that I can't find. So she went deep. Like she started writing letters to the city of Baltimore to find old aerial photos. And without having ever been to Baltimore, she said, I think this is it. It's in Patterson Park. It's the old pool house. And I had thought it might be in Patterson Park, but I was like, what if they knocked the building down? And they had knocked it down. But when I went there on foot, I found one or two brick pilings that matched up. And I was like, she found it from like 3,300 miles away. So I love that. The spirit of collaboration. I love that. I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, the M&M spot that I gave you, I was going to Detroit for exploring, and knowing that I wanted to get into this, that was my very first now and then was this picture in Detroit. And I had a picture, so I had found these pictures of Eminem before he was famous, and he was in a band called, now I can't remember what it's called. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Hold on. I gotta say what it is because
no, that's fine. Take your time. It was great because that's actually how we got connected. Because you said, hey, if you're ever up in Detroit, I have this picture that I don't think anyone else has found, which is really exciting.
So the band was called Soul Intent, and that was Eminem's sort of first rap hip hop collective that he was a part of. And so I found these pictures of him very young, and I knew that they were somewhere in Warren, Michigan. I had no idea where. I knew roughly where in Warren, Michigan, Eminem lived at that point. So I'm going Google Maps up and down, 8 Mile, you know, and I'm like, some buildings were lining up, but they weren't quite, and I could not find it. So what I did, I went to Reddit, and I went to the Detroit subreddit, and I posted the picture of 2 pictures of Eminem in front of this building. And I said, Detroit, I need your help. I'm trying to find the exact same location of where this picture was taken of Eminem in 1995. I can't figure it out. I know one of you guys can help me. Sure enough, some guy picks up there's a number on the side of the building that they used to use for an address or a phone number that they don't use this anymore. Anyways, this guy sends me a private message with a PDF of a newspaper clipping from the 1980s of when this building was an auction house. And then he sent me the Google Maps coordinates, and I pulled it up, and sure enough, there it is. there, and I wasn't too far off when I was looking, but I would not have found it because I wasn't looking that way. So it was through the help of Reddit, which is Reddit can be your best friend or your worst enemy, as many of us know. But on this day, they really helped me out and they helped me find that one. And that was my first one. And I've never seen anybody else do it now and then of that picture. So again, I was so excited to find it that I'm happy to share it with somebody like you who will appreciate it, especially in the world of hip hop,
Yeah, no doubt. And I was like, this is really cool because, like you said, I mean, a lot of people have been to where the house used to be, and I guess some people have bricks from the house, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I had never seen that. I had never heard of that. So, and then for you to have found that building was really cool. The Reddit connection is interesting too, because a similar thing happened with us when we were trying to find Jay-Z in a Mercedes Benz in London. I don't know if I don't know if you know this story, but there was I'd seen the picture come across my computer a million times, and I was like, "Wow, when am I ever going to be in London?" And how would I find that? And of course, now Google Maps makes it easy to like drive around in cities that you don't live in. But similarly on Reddit, a bunch of people had sort of asked where it was, and there were all these threads, and most people, the ones I looked at, nobody knew where it was. They're like, oh, all the streets in London look the same post World War II. All the architecture is exactly the same from street to street. And some people thought Notting Hill, some people thought somewhere else. Anyway, I got it. I was on a podcast talking about it, and a person who's got their own movie location page. I think it's Movie Location Hunter is his handle. This guy Justin, he reached out to me and he's like, I think I found it. And it was because I couldn't find it, and I had suggested maybe a general area that it might be in. He's like, I think I found it, and he wasn't in London either. So then the next time one of us went to London, they went to the spot, took the picture, and then we mashed it up, and we turned that into a little video as well. And actually, let me pivot there because I don't want this to be about me. You do videos, like that's part of your presentation. Like you said, everyone has their own sort of way of presenting it. And one of the things I really like about your Instagram is it seems like you have the chops to edit things, and you have good equipment, like maybe like a decent camera, and the still photos you take, some of these abandoned buildings are beautiful. They're hauntingly beautiful. They're they're the kinds that make people want to do urban exploration, I think. You're like, whoa, that's creepy and weird. Like, where is that? And so if you could speak to maybe how you do your video, but also I'm really curious, how do you go about finding abandoned places? Are there a lot where you live, or is it something that you just wherever you go?
Well, for starters, I mean, where I live near Toronto in Ontario, Canada, there's a lot of abandoned houses. There's hundreds and thousands of houses, and it's all old farmland, right? And developers have bought up all this property, and they're just sitting on the property waiting for permits and all this, and the houses just sort of sit there and decay, these old farmhouses. Then you've got these neighborhoods in Toronto that are like really wealthy neighborhoods full of mansions, and you got all these people that buy mansions and property just to sit on it and then hopefully make money off of it, but they never actually live in it. So there's a lot of those. There's a lot of they're not actually abandoned, they're just vacant, but because nobody's lived in them for so many years, they've got water damage and peeling paint. But I've been lucky enough that in my 12 years of doing this, I've made a lot of friends, a lot of enemies too, but I made a lot of friends who we share amongst each other. If I find something cool, I'll share it with this group of friends. If they find something, they'll share it with me. We get out together and sort of swap locations. So it's so much fun. It's so funny, the parallel between these two hobbies, because it's all Google Maps and internet research and who you know. And if somebody posts a picture of an exterior of an abandoned house, you can go on the hunt and try and find it using Google Lens or looking for certain landmarks. Is there a mountain in the back? Sort of what geographic area it might be. It's exactly the same. and of finding a location of an abandoned building versus finding a location of Lady Gaga somewhere in downtown Manhattan. And that's how I find them. Now, in terms of my setup and my gear, yeah, I've got a Nikon mirrorless camera, and it takes really good sharp pictures. So for these pictures, for the now and then pictures, I set my camera up on a tripod, and I'll have the picture with me printed. I probably spent $120 on printing 5x7s and 6x6 pictures of all the album covers and all the pictures to have them with me and bring them on this trip. So I set up my camera on my tripod exactly how I want it to be. So then when I put the picture in front of it, it lines up as good as I can get it to line up. So with that, I'll film and I'll take pictures with that horizontally, and then vertically I have a DJI Action 4, I think 3 or 4 Action 4, I think, video camera. So it's like a GoPro, but it's a DJI, very sharp. So I mounted that on top of my DSLR camera. So I'm doing horizontal with my camera and then vertical with my DJI camera. Which is mounted on top. And then, so I got 2 really good high quality sharp cameras that are getting the video footage, getting the pictures. Always obviously good lighting because I'm doing this during the day. And then the funny thing about my narration in the videos, I'm not actually narrating, it's AI. So I use a program that has basically learned my voice.
No way. Really?
I uploaded about 5 minutes worth of me talking in this program, and it's spending and learning. So now I can go in, I can type whatever I want into this program, hit enter, and my voice speaks back to me. So I don't have to do this anymore. I don't need the microphone. I don't have to read. I don't have to narrate. It's all done through AI.
Even, well, in the video part too?
Well, the Eminem one, the Eminem one I did me speaking, the very first one. But when I was in Manhattan, I had like 50 locations, and I'm like, I can't sit here and narrate that to 50 times and get it all the locations I want with all these people walking around me and getting in the way. So I decided, instead of me reading and speaking out loud, I'm just going to do the now and then videos and pictures, and then I'm going to use my program to narrate with my voice.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's
just like
that's wild. I mean, so you're basically typing up a script beforehand, or maybe it could be afterwards too, right?
Yeah. So what I did for this trip to Manhattan and the Bronx and all that, in Brooklyn, I had already written my caption for every location because I was planning to read them. So I had taken I'm so organized. I got my 5x7, right? Let's say I got a 5x7 of Biggie. And then I went to Staples and I bought sticker paper, and I printed my caption or my narration, and I stuck it to the back of the picture.
Okay.
So my plan was, on the spot, I would read what I have to say, what the history was. But like I said, that would have taken so long for each location. So now I've got 40 some locations. I'm just going to release one every Friday. I've already got them written. Pictures are taken, videos are made, captions are written. All I got to do is put them together, and it's done.
Now, it's just your voice. There's not an AI of you, is there?
No, just my voice.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm sure we're heading in that direction.
We're getting there, yeah.
Yeah, but that's pretty fascinating. I mean, and just, I'm just thinking of Jimmy Ferrari, who normally hosts this podcast. He just went on this incredible trip to California, and he hit like 150 locations in San Francisco and LA and Albuquerque, and I mean he went crazy with it, and he's really good at this, and he does a lot of his photo edits are beautiful when he's done. And then what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to do a theme or an idea, and we get a camera person to meet us on site, and we do it like a little mini documentary. So there's so many different ways to do this. I'm definitely a little bit AI phobic at this point. being a painter and an artist on the
Yeah, yeah.
side, I'm just a little worried that we're all going to get replaced somehow. But that's a really fascinating way to do it, especially if you're leveraging your own voice and
Yeah,
your own writing skills. I mean, if you write what you want to say and
yes.
it's your voice saying it, it's just really a means to an end. So I would never
So
have been any wiser had you not told
if
us.
the viewers or listeners go to my Instagram, you'll see my last post I did was Elvis Presley. So that's an AI voice of mine. The
Wow.
Eminem one, I think the first Eminem one is me. The second one is AI, and then from Elvis on, they're all going to be AI.
I
So
love
it
it.
sounds just like me.
I don't know what it is about all of us that we give ourselves these homework assignments or this work to do. Like I love that you're like, yeah, it's going to be every Friday, and but like no one's telling us to do any of this. We just want to, right? We
Yeah,
just
well, that's the
really,
thing is like
yeah.
I need a structure because I made a YouTube channel for this as well. I'm calling it again, and the rest is history. Because if I put this stuff on my regular YouTube channel, nobody watches because everybody that watches my normal YouTube channel wants my abandoned content.
Right.
So I posted my first two Eminem ones to my YouTube channel and nobody watched. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to make a custom YouTube channel just for this stuff. But my Facebook and my Instagram, I just mix everything up. I don't care. But I need to have a structure, right? So I post a YouTube video every Saturday of an abandoned video. And I post abandoned content, Monday to whatever. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, what day can I use to post this stuff, the pop culture stuff? So I picked Friday. So every Friday basically is my pop culture post, just to take a break from the abandoned stuff.
And did you give yourself the parameter of keeping it under a minute? I feel like I heard you say that a few times about like,
Yeah,
all
I
right, I got to
tried
do this in a minute.
I think they're about a minute to a minute and 30 seconds because sometimes it's hard to get all the history in.
Yeah.
So yeah, for the pop culture stuff, I definitely less than 2 minutes, but no more than 2 minutes. So yeah, around a minute to a minute and a half, probably.
I think that's really smart. I mean, I was digging into your site pretty deep before we got on the call, and I going back to the abandoned places, and the funeral homes and things like that. Those are things that are around you in Toronto as well?
They have been. Most of the funeral homes are in the U.S. There's a lot in the South. There's a lot in Detroit. There's some in New York State. We used to have quite a few here in Ontario, but they're all gone now. So this week I just happened to be posting 2 different funeral homes, but it's been years since I posted a funeral home, so I don't have that many of them.
That's just creepy stuff to me. I mean, those are all things I never really want to know about. And then when you're showing it, you're like, wow, like there's these strange gurneys and strange like freezers, and I don't know. But you've done such a great job with it. I love like the pictures that you found, going back to there's 45 records that are strewn around on the ground in one picture, and there's like I said, the Elvis cards. But I love, you have a good eye for it, of course, but I think I think you joked around about it earlier, but maybe you weren't joking. Are you breaking into these places? Are you like not allowed to be there and you go anyway?
No, definitely not allowed to. I am a
Yeah.
100% trespassing, no
Yeah,
matter what.
right.
Breaking, I mean, when you say breaking in, like I'm not smashing a window.
Right.
I'm not causing damage. If a
Right.
window will open and I can get in, I'm going to go in that window. If the door will open with maybe a bit of an elbow, or a shoulder, I'll do that. I'm not going to cause any damage because the last thing I need, I can hit in where I live, a trespassing fine is a $65 ticket. It's like getting a parking ticket or a speeding ticket. It's really not a big deal.
Right.
In the US, it's different. Breaking and entering is a different story. You almost have, what I believe to be true is you need to have the intention of committing a crime. So breaking and entering with the intention of committing a crime. I am entering with the intention of taking photos. I'm not entering to steal or to vandalize or anything. So
at worst you're trespassing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you have to worry about like your status as a Canadian citizen when you're in the United States? Does that factor in as well?
My my wife hates when I go to the States. Because I've got some friends that have had some pretty gnarly situations in terms of like getting shot at, or, you know,
Oh
getting
my God.
abused by property owners, or, you know, just, it's a whole different thing. And last year I was in Ohio and I was exploring an abandoned hotel, and somebody had a business across the street called the police. So I'm taking pictures of the pool and I heard footsteps behind me. I turn around and there's two cops with machine guns.
Oh my
And
God,
they're
really?
pointed right at me. And I'm like, whoa, I'm just taking pictures. I'm not doing anything. He's like, okay, put your camera down, just stand back, put your hands up, took the guns off me. They just sort of checked my bag, make sure I'm not a scrapper or I'm not stealing stuff. They're like, okay, you shouldn't be here. It's really dangerous in here. It's like, there was a shooting in here a week ago. So
Wow,
anyways,
that's crazy.
yeah. And then if I get caught and charged in Canada, I cannot travel to the United States. If you're a criminal in Canada, you cannot go to the United States, which
Okay.
would really suck.
Okay.
So, which is one of the reasons why I don't steal things when I'm exploring. As much as I'd love to have taken those Elvis cards or some of the records I found, if I get caught leaving an abandoned building with a handful of stuff,
Mhm.
that's a whole other world that I don't want to be involved. You know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I actually like I haven't done a whole lot of the abandoned house type of stuff. I'm sort of stuck in the history part of it, where
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be on the same site as where something happened. The closest I come, I think, to that is if it's true crime.
Yes.
If it's a true crime location. And again, to bring up Jimmy does a lot of the true crime stuff. He does things called mob hits. So
Nice.
he knows a lot of the history. He lives in Brooklyn, and a lot of the history in Brooklyn and Staten Island and around Manhattan. He knows a lot about the mafia stories.
Okay.
And he's done a lot of research on it. So when we were there together last year, he was walking us through I guess it was we were on Mulberry Street. We were talking about some locations that he knew used to be social clubs or places where
Right.
people had been killed. And it's I find it all fascinating too. So, I love the hip hop stuff, but who captured the photos that I grew up with. So when you were in Hollis, for instance, Jeanette Beckman and Glenn Friedman are the reasons we know where all those places are, because they took these incredible photos. So I've been sort of going around the photo and trying to talk to the photographers, and some of them are great, and some of them are really valuable resources.
Yeah.
I met this great photographer named Michael Benabib, who had this treasure trove of photos he took in the late 80s, early 90s of hip hop artists. And he invited us to his studio and to his home. And when we were there, he let us record, and we recorded him, and we recorded video, and we took a lot of photos. And I realized that most of the photos he took of all of these famous artists, LL Cool J and Naughty by Nature and Miles Davis, a lot of them were taken in his apartment. Like they would come to his apartment for a photo shoot. So, to try to match up a spot, and you're in the spot meeting with the photographer, it was really incredible. So we're going to turn that into a video as well. But there's so much here that I think you and I have in common with why we do what we do. We love the history part, and we love I think it seems like we love collaborating. It sounds like you have a community of your own with the urban exploration people. And when I say urban exploration, we've been using that term for a long time with Delta Bravo, but very few of us do what you're doing, where you're really finding abandoned places or rotting places. What was it? There's a power plant one that you did that was really cool. Can you tell us about that?
Done a couple. The biggest one I've ever done was there's a power plant in Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls has 3 abandoned power plants, and the best one I never got into, but the second best one I did, and it's on the Upper Niagara River, and it's got this tunnel that's about 200 feet underground. And so the water would come in from the upper Niagara River into the power plant, and then it would drop down what's called the penstock, which is a huge pipe. The water would drop down the penstock 200 feet, spin the blades of the turbine, which then spins and works the generator, which makes the power. A very, very explain it like I'm five way of how power generation works. So anyways, the water rushes down 200 feet from the upper river, then it's got to come out somewhere. So they have a 2,500 foot long tunnel under the city of Niagara Falls that then runs the water back into the lower Niagara River. So I get into this abandoned power plant, which has been closed since the early 2000s. And first of all, I got the whole turbine hall to myself. You know, the control room, the generators, the turbines, like everything. Then I've got to try and figure out how the hell do I get down to the tail race, which is where the water comes out, this big brick tunnel. So I'm looking around and I finally found some stairs, and then I find some more stairs, and then I find some ladders, and then I'm all the way down to the almost at the very bottom, and then I see there's this opening in the ground, in the floor, that underneath this opening is a 30-foot long extendable ladder. Now, a 30-foot long extendable ladder is wobbly as shit. So I have to now crawl around onto this wobbly ass 30-foot extendable ladder with my camera bag, and if I fall, and if the ladder drops, I'm stuck. So very carefully, stupidest thing I've ever done probably was to get on this ladder. Now I'm in this completely pitch black brick tunnel, 2,500 feet long, 200 feet under the city of Niagara Falls. Now I have to try and walk and make my way to the end where the light is and where I can sort of see the outfall. So I did that, and just a phenomenal experience to be down there. It's now a tourist attraction. They've actually, the Niagara Parks Commission owned it, and they turned it into a tourist attraction. And you can go in now legally, take an elevator down to that tunnel, and they've secured it. They've made it safe. It's not nearly as fun, but it's still very cool. So I went with my daughter.
Right. Now, who were there? Were you by yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I went back and I experienced it when it was abandoned, and then I went back and experienced it as a tourist attraction, which again, not as fun, not as interesting, but still neat to see.
I'll say, I mean, that's incredible though. I mean, so when you make a plan to do that, are you telling people where you're going in case you don't come back? They can.
Yeah, my wife knew where my wife knew where I was. In a case like that, when it's really risky, I'll tell her where I am. And another friend of mine who had been there a couple of weeks before, he knew I was going. So, but yeah, in terms of like being alone, my wife knew. I did go back a couple of other times with friends, so we had gone together. But yeah, when it's something really stupid and risky, my wife knows where I'm going.
That's amazing. Geez. I'm a little bit too much of a worrywart to do those kinds of things. I did have an opportunity to go when I was out in LA. I was with some people who are bigger risk takers than I am. And, you know, I guess I'm just to an age now where I'm just like, I better be careful. I have like, my kids, and I have my wife, and I don't know. I've never been that wild and crazy anyway, but yeah, it was cool. It was emboldening to have people with me who I knew were going to hop a fence or make a phone call or whatever they needed to do to make something cool happen. There's something really exciting about that. But yeah, I don't know about that 30-foot ladder or being in that pitch black tunnel.
No, well, I mean, this was in 2000 and I think this was 2017 or 18. So I'm 49 now. I'm not taking the risks that I used to. I still take some risks, but I'm a little more careful now and more sort of choosy with the things that I do. But don't get me wrong, if a stupid opportunity comes up, I would probably take it.
So I always feel obligated to ask if you have, I guess this is two questions. Do you have any white whales of things that you really want to find but haven't been able to find? Or visit, and also, do you have any favorites that you've done or that you would like to talk about that you haven't already?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I can go two different ways with this because there's the abandoned stuff and then there's the pop culture stuff. And having just really dipped my feet into the pop culture side of things, I think a white whale for me would be Michael Jackson content and locations. And when I was in Brooklyn, I went to the subway station where they filmed the Bad video. But I couldn't get them to let me in. I got a picture of the staircase that goes down, but it's locked. You can't get in. And I couldn't get anybody that would. I was looking for ways I could sneak in, but there was no way. And the guy that worked at the booth wouldn't let me in. So, but I definitely plan on doing a trip to LA probably over a weekend next year and hit some spots, the Thriller video and some other spots like that. And I would probably, I think when my last trip to New York, which again was really my only trip besides the Detroit on the M&M thing, I really liked the Biggie locations, you know, the cemetery and his apartment or his condo. But I honestly, I think I enjoyed Run DMC more than any of them that day.
Yeah, nice.
The neighborhood, the people were so nice, you know, and having watched so many documentaries and films of those guys on that street, or Daryl McDaniels talking about, you know, the alley and stuff like that, and the Jam Master Jay mural. I actually went to Jam Master Jay's grave as well that on that trip, which was way far away from Hollis. But yeah, I think my favorite that I did on that trip would be the Run DMC stuff, because there was so much of it in such a small space. And
it is, right? Yeah.
And the locations didn't come easy, because there's the one picture you know of where they're sitting on the sidewalk on Jamaica Avenue. And I didn't find that picture until the day before I left the location. I had been reading so many different, I read Glenn's write-up about the day and where they went, and I thought it was going to be on Hollis Avenue. So I spent hours on Google Maps going building by building by building up Hollis. But what I noticed was there's the specific brick beside the, what do you think call those things that they pull down?
The garage door?
Yeah. So beside the garage door, there was a very specific type of brick. And then there was that little lip from the sidewalk. So I have the type of grate on the sidewalk. I have its distance from the side. I have the two spaces where you put the lock, the brick, and then the lip. And I'm going up and down Hollis, and there's nothing. There's nothing. And I don't know. I don't remember what it was, but something led me to Jamaica Avenue. But I don't remember where I found that.
Was it the park shots, maybe? Because the park is right across the street.
It might have been. It might have been. But yeah, I was like, oh, fuck. Because I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to ask it, because so much from that trip had come to me easily, you know? So I'm like, I want to find something on my own. And I really wanted that shot, which I got the day before I left. So there was a lot of sort of like feeling of you know, I did it. You know, I found it. And then there was also the pedestrian tunnel, which I found that one on. I mean, it's not hard to find a pedestrian tunnel, but which one was it?
Yeah.
Because there's so many, you know?
Yeah.
And then the where they took the picture for the Walk This Way cover against that brick wall, or that wall where the vines are. When I got there was a huge truck parked right in front of me.
Ah, that's the worst. Of course there was. Yeah. Jeez. That was that was the video we made, the In Search of Run DMC. That was that was the result of all of what you just said. Like I looked and looked and looked. I asked Glenn Friedman, I'm like, this is my favorite Run DMC picture of them sitting against the garage door. And he's like, he goes, it's kind of complicated. I can't really tell you exactly where. And I had given up. And then like you, I was driving around on Google Maps. And what tipped it for me was the little Gothic arches in the architecture above the business. Cause it's like a preschool now, I think. And, when I did the video, I did a mashup of them sitting in front, and it turned out pretty good. But I went back a year later and the garage door was down, and it was
Yeah.
a perfect match because when I was there, when we did the video, the business was open. It was like a preschool or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's for me, it's detective work. You know, you start
Yeah.
realizing, oh, this other picture from Glenn's book is from the same roll of film he shot, and it's earlier,
Right.
it's like a minute before he took that picture. And oh yeah, they're sitting on Jamaica Avenue, and there's an address in the background. And so
Yeah.
you can start connecting dots, and man, it's thrilling. And so it's cool that you went through the same thing. And kudos to finding the Walk This Way one too. I found that too. And again, asked for help. And the only thing Glenn told me on that one was like, I think he's like, it's next to a bridge, a railroad bridge. And I'm like, okay, railroad tracks, that's a pretty big clue.
Yeah.
And I know they run straight through the whole town, but
Mhm.
that's where the pedestrian bridge was. That's where the this way thing was. It's all there. Like you said, it's not a big place. It's a really small community.
I got lucky. The garage door was down at the daycare when I went. But I had a problem though. When I went to the Hollis grocery store, there's the picture of them with the car.
Yeah.
And DMC is on the front. He's wearing that crown, the king
Mhm.
crown. So I'm shooting that spot. And there's the convenience store, and then there's a barber shop
Mhm.
on the other side. And the owner of the convenience store was super cool. I showed him the pictures, and he said, that was right here. He says, no, Run DMC was right here. I said, yeah.
Really?
He was
Wow.
away by it. But then I was setting up and taking a picture where the car was with the crown, and the guy who owns the barber shop comes, and he comes to work, comes right up to me. He says, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking a picture of Run DMC when they were here. I showed it to him. He says, you're not with Run DMC. I know exactly who you are. I said, you know who I am? He says, I know exactly who you are, and I know exactly what you're doing. Took a picture of me, took a picture of my license plate. And he kept saying, I know exactly who you are. He has no idea who I am, but somebody at some point must have been taking pictures of that corner and caused the problem. And he thought I
Wow.
was with them.
Yeah, I guess so.
So,
I hope you
it was-
I hope you never find out the other half of that story. Jeez. Yeah, it's always interesting. We had a great experience when we were in Hollis. Everybody was really nice. And we were looking at this one mural, and this woman came out of the corner store where this mural was, and it was all the people that had been in Hollis that were famous. And so it was Fife Dog, and it was Run DMC, and she came out and she said, hey, what are you all doing? And I said, oh, we're studying and researching Run DMC. And she got all excited, and she's like, I remember when they were here, and I remember when all this was happening. And then I looked over her shoulder, and she was on the mural too. She was the owner of the store, and it was called Dolly's or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's just really it always depends, unfortunately, on who you meet, but it can make the experience so much richer when you have people who get excited, or not only get excited, but they want to do it too. Like when we were in Central Park and we found the Nirvana spot, it was in the middle of the most random part of the park. And this guy walks up with his girlfriend, and I was just excited. I was like a little kid. I was like, I can't believe we found it. And my buddy Rand was there, and he was excited for me, and he was along for the ride, and he helped me find it. It was just so great. And the guy that walked up, I look over, and he's wearing a Foo Fighters shirt.
Oh,
And I
nice.
was like- and I said, hey, I said, sorry to bother you, but I'm so excited. I just found this location I've been looking for a couple of years. And you walk up and you're wearing a Foo Fighters shirt. It's a Nirvana spot. And he goes, oh, and he was a little standoffish at first. And I said, do you want to see it? And he's like, sure. And I show him, and then he calls his girlfriend over. He goes, hey, this was a Nirvana spot. Like, can I see that picture again so I can sit like Kurt was sitting? And he poses like Kurt, and he got all into it. I love when that stuff happens. And Rand and I were running around in I think it was 61st Street, and I had found a couple years earlier, I had found these Marilyn Monroe 7-year itch photos where she's hanging out the window on the second floor of this townhouse, and it's 61st Street, and there's a whole bunch of photos of her on the stairs and in the windows and looking up at the camera and looking down at the camera. Anyway, it's really cool. So we get there and I show Rand. I was like, yeah, this is where it all happened. And this girl walks out of the building, and I'm usually like, I'm gonna leave everybody alone, but Rand is really friendly, and he's like, he goes, excuse me, do you live here? And I would think that she'd be like, buzz off, or just not even acknowledge that
Yeah.
he asked her anything. But she's like, yeah, we live here. And he goes, do you know that they filmed 7-Year Itch here? And I thought, oh, here we go. But instead, she was so excited. She was like, what? They filmed it here? And we had all these pictures to show her. And she was like, you just made my whole day. And she got really excited. She couldn't wait to tell her boyfriend or her husband. It was just really, it was awesome. And it makes it better, I think, when people are excited about it.
2 Maryland stories from my New York trip. So I had gone to do the picture of the subway grate.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yep.
And so first of all, I get there and there's a fucking tour bus right there. But then when I was reading up on the filming of this, from what I understand, they did film the scenes there, but there are so many tourists and so much going on that they ended up having to rebuild that set in LA on a soundstage. So what you see in 7-Year Itch, where her dress blows up at the subway grate, wasn't actually filmed right there. It was filmed in a soundstage in California. And I might be wrong about that, but that's kind of what I found. But then also lining up the subway grates with the building, if that was specifically it doesn't line up with where the grates.
I remember you typing that up and reading that, and I don't disagree. I do think that some of the images that are accessible online are probably still photos that are not from the movie, but from when they did shoot it there.
Yes,
so
that's true. And then I had found about 5 different pictures of Marilyn Monroe sitting on the fountain in front of the Plaza Hotel.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of my Facebook followers are older women, and they would love to see this.
Yeah.
I get there. They're doing construction in front of the plaza, and I couldn't get to the fountain.
I know. We were there like a week later. That's right.
Yeah.
Did you do the one? There's some really good ones in front of Tiffany's, though. I don't know if you've got those. That's like a 2 blocks away.
I have to go back, and let me tell you, I did a combination of walking, and then I rented those city bikes as well to get around, and I did some subway. So I was headed from, I don't know, somewhere in Lower Manhattan, and I was going to do the kiss picture for Hotter Than Hell. So I decided I'm going to take the subway. I got on the wrong line, and I blew way past the location and ended up at Penn Station.
Oh wow!
So my plan was to do Hotter Than Hell, and then Simon and Garfunkel. What was it? Wednesday morning, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So I totally missed those 2. And then this was taking me so long, right? First of all, I lost all this time on the subway. And then I'm like, all right, I can either go this way and there's 5, or I can go all the way this way to 1 and then backtrack. So I have to go back.
Yeah.
Because I missed so many from that trip. I missed Tina Turner. What's Love Got to Do with It? Was done at the very. That was actually in Brooklyn on the other side, under the Brooklyn Bridge.
But there's plenty from that video in Manhattan as well. So on what's it called, Commerce Street, there's a little kind of L-shaped street. They filmed part of the video there, and then there's also a park where Keith Haring painted a pool that's really famous. When she's walking by the wrought iron fence and dancing with people, that's there. And then right behind her, even in the video, are some brownstones, and that's where the beginning of the Cosby Show was filmed.
Oh no shit! Yeah.
Yeah. So it was always it's just the credits, and I know the Cosbys were supposed to have lived, or the Huxtables were supposed to have lived in Brooklyn, but it was it's a Manhattan brownstone.
I'll tell you about being in Manhattan. I have been to New York City twice with my wife on a tourist trip, and we did Greenwich Village and we did Times Square and Central Park. But exploring New York this way, is so much better
Mhm.
because you're going down roads that you wouldn't normally see, and you're seeing
Yeah.
parts of New York City that you wouldn't normally see. And riding those bikes was awesome.
Yeah.
Next time I'm going to bring my own bike because it was pretty expensive. So, but seeing Manhattan that way, to see these sort of off the beaten path locations and not going to Times Square, not going to the big tourist spots and going around
Yeah.
them,
For sure.
it was such a better way, in my opinion, of touring and seeing New York City. And the people were so excited to see what I was doing. I'm doing Paul's Boutique, and there's some lady kind of curious watching me. And I said, she's like, what are you doing? So I showed her the picture, and I said, this is where they shot the cover of Paul's Boutique. And she was just flabbergasted. Oh my God, that's so cool. And then I'm in Central Park, and I'm doing the Jimi Hendrix Electric Ladyland studio picture, the Electric Ladyland studio at the Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Fountain thing. And so I'm waiting for all the families and their kids to wrap up and get my camera set up. And then I went and I sat right where Jimi Hendrix had sat in the thing. So there's this couple watching me. So when I come down, they're like, what are you doing there? You look like you're doing something. And so I showed them the picture, and they're like, no shit. They said Jimi Hendrix sat right there.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, like, babe, look at this. And they were just amazed. And they're like,
It's great.
you're walking through New York and you're just doing your tourist thing. And then you realize that you're standing somewhere where a piece of history happened, and they get so excited.
I could say the same exact things. I feel exactly the same way. I've been to New York so many times now. In fact, I had a streak where I was going up every Tuesday for the past month. I didn't go this week, but and I just go for the day. I don't even stay overnight, and I see so much. And now when I go up, I don't know how you feel about this, but since you've visited these places, as you walk by them in the future, you won't have to necessarily take a picture, but you feel connected to that spot in a way that you feel like, I know that the Beastie Boys stood on that corner. Like there's that one corner, what was it, like 26th Street? It's just a restaurant now, but it's where they wore the do-rags, and they're with Rick Rubin.
I
That
went there.
it's such a random spot. Nobody knows that that's popular unless you're a Beastie Boys or a hip hop fan and you have a knowledge of that picture. And then for years that was under scaffolding, and now it's all fixed up. They got rid of all the graffiti, and it's in a nice part of town. But yeah, it's so cool. I mean, even we were just in Greenwich Village, and we were over in Washington Square Park. I could spend days just around there,
Yeah. I did Ramones and Beastie Boys at Washington Square Park.
Under the arch. Yeah,
I did that. And it was just the people were so awesome. And see, you're lucky, because for me, it's a 7.5 hour drive to get to New York. So I have to make a weekend out of it. I can't just skip for the day and come home. So I have to make a whole thing out of it. So I don't know. I may try and get back in the fall this year. I wouldn't mind doing one more trip because I can't stop thinking about it. It's so much fun. And stopping to get a bite to eat at some random burger shack or whatever. It was super cool. And but I'm also looking into some Canadian content too, because everything, I did this whole trip to Manhattan, and I'm doing all this US stuff, and I'm like, well, I'm Canadian. I got to try and find some Canadian locations, because nobody's doing this in Canada. So
isn't there a lot in Toronto? I feel like Toronto was used as New York City in a lot of movies because it was cheaper to film there, right?
Yes, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of bands that are from Toronto. But we have a band in Canada called the Tragically Hip. And heard of them probably. They're probably one of the most famous, popular bands to come out of Canada. The singer died a few years ago, unfortunately, so they're no longer around. But I'm lucky to have an open communication with one of their guitar players, Paul Langlois. And I interviewed him for a documentary I did a few years ago, and we've kept an open dialogue together. We email each other every once in a while. So now that I'm doing this project, I went out and I found a whole bunch of Tragically Hip pictures from the early mid-1980s when they were very, very young in this city called Kingston, Ontario. So now I've got about 5 different pictures of the Hip when they were very, very young, and I managed to find 3 of them, but there's 2 I just couldn't find. So who better to ask than the guy in the hip?
That's amazing. Yeah, 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 for
So we were
sure.
emailing yesterday, and he's like, this one was here, but I'll message, Robbie, who's the other guitar player. I'll message Rob, and he'll know where that one is. So he's basically feeding me the locations that I can't find. Who better to ask than the guy
That's
that's in the
amazing.
picture?
That's awesome. And that they're into it is great. I have a buddy of mine, his name is Skip, and
Yeah.
his Twitter handle, actually I guess it's his Instagram handle, is tragically Skip.
Oh,
So
that's a good one.
there's some fans down here for sure. Yeah, there's something about like that. It's like something kind of amazing that where you can contact the person that's in the picture and ask them, where were you when this was taken? Or contact the photographer, where were you when this was taken? And sometimes it's actually been, I know Jeanette Beckman one time asked us where we thought the picture was taken, and
No way.
yeah, we kind of crowdsourced it, and we got back to her. It was like a picture of EPMD.
Nice. Well, you've talked to Chuck D, right? You've had Chuck D. You've talked to the DMC. You've had some
Yeah.
pretty good contact.
Yeah, well, when I did the Run DMC, In Search of Run DMC, which was the first video we did, um, I I didn't know I was going to be recording anything, but I knew I wanted to make it count. So before I left the house, I had I had asked DMC himself. I'm like, can you give me any intel about where this is? And I actually invited him to meet me there, and he's like, I can't meet you there, but I can tell you, you want to go, you want to hit the mural, you want to go to the park, and so he gave me some great little bits of advice, and
Nice.
one of the things I asked him is in the music when they say standing on 25th Street, I'm like, this 25th Street, is that 205th Street? And he's like, yeah, it's 205th Street. Because a lot of people think he means 25th Street somewhere, but it's 205th Street in Hollis. And so it was just, hearing it from him was incredible. And the Chuck thing, like, I'm hoping eventually, and this is to your point about Tragically Hip, Chuck has been really helpful. He was in one of our videos because we asked him about the Malcolm X firebombed house in Queens, and Chuck is from that area. He lived out on Long Island, but he also is a historian himself.
Right.
And he told us, oh, you should also go by the Louis Armstrong house, and he gave us some intel. But I've been trying to ask him if he'll be a part of our videos in the future, if he's ever in New York or if he's ever back home where he's from. I would love to get him in front of 510 South Franklin Street, which is where the Bomb Squad recorded the first couple of PE albums. So
Right.
And if he ever says yes, I'm like, just say the word, I'll come right up. So I think he likes what we do. I think he's a historian. He's somebody who wants to keep all of the facts straight, but he also wants to help perpetuate his favorite parts of history. And he's a sports fan. He's a pop culture fan. He is history as the front man of PE, but he's also a fine artist. He's a painter or a drawer, and it's always really exciting talking to him. And yeah, I think like the Tragically Hip guitar player helping you out, it's a whole other level of not only confirmation, but it's excitement, because you're like, wow, there's something meta about it where you're with the person who's in the picture or who made the history on the spot that you're talking about.
What's funny is though they're just people. He's just
Of
another
course.
guy, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
we build him up in our heads so much, but at the end of the day, he's just another guy.
For
He's
sure.
just sitting at home having a cigarette with his wife beside him, thinking about what to have for dinner. He just happens to have done some pretty awesome shit in his life.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that's once you get past, and I fan out all the time, but I try not to like make it obvious. But you're right. And then once you get past that and you talk about real things,
Yeah.
like what gets you motivated. I mean, I've had some great conversations with Chuck about art and making prints and
Right.
things that had nothing to do with Public Enemy, and
Yeah.
it's terrific. So, but. Yeah, as far as this community goes, I feel like, you're doing some awesome stuff, and I'm glad to know you. I'm glad that our paths have crossed, and I'm certainly willing to share whatever I can, but I would totally understand you not asking. But if you ever like want a hint, or
Yeah.
if you ever find yourself stumped, or if you're even if you're in a community where, like, if you're in New York and you're like, what's in this neighborhood?
Yeah. Right.
You shared your Google map with me, and my Google map is crazy because there's just so many pins on it.
Yeah.
And I was impressed with yours because you also, and very similar to what I try to do, is you wrote descriptions next to everything. And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I want to do a little more with color coding, and I have green flags with things I still need to hit, and I have
Yeah.
yellow stars where I've already been. But I could spend hours just on my map alone. But I love sharing that stuff. And there's some things where, like, people are like, I wouldn't stop there. That's no big deal. But other people are like, no, I love that movie, or I love that song, or I love that musician. And that
Yeah.
happened here. I can't believe it. So yeah, if you ever need anything like that, or if you want to collaborate on anything, let us know, because
We
it's a
should definitely collaborate.
good group. Yeah, yeah, it's great. I feel like we already are, right? That's what this is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to share? I want to be sensitive to your time and all of that, but
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome what we are collectively doing. And, in terms of like what you've done and your depth of knowledge and your respect for history, it's awesome. I'm super happy to know you and be here chatting with you. And it's just so cool. I picked up this idea, and then I've discovered there's a couple other guys doing it, and here we are now talking about it. And I'm super excited to do more. I can't wait to go back to New York City. I'm hopefully going to go to LA next year and do some spots there. And I'm just getting started. And there's so much more for us to talk about in the future.
well, that's awesome. Do yourself a favor and connect with a guy named Rayan Belshare. He has a Instagram account called Nerd Locations.
Yeah, I follow him. Yeah.
Oh, great. He's salt of the earth. He is very passionate about what he does.
Yeah.
And we've become very good friends, and we've traveled together, and we've seen some amazing things together. He sort of showed me around LA. I showed him around New York. And it's funny,
Nice.
I'm showing anybody around New York because I'm not from there.
I'm from there. Yeah.
I just go up there a lot, and I've sort of dug in as much as I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like, keep in touch, and I'll keep following what you're doing, and interacting with what you're posting, because it's really inspiring to me. And it's so cool to sort of see my reflection a little bit, and the things that you're doing. I'm like, and the way you even said a lot of the things, I'm like, couldn't agree more. So yeah, that's great. So thanks, Dave from Freaktography. If you want to follow him, is that the best place to follow you? Freaktography on Instagram?
Freaktography.com, Freaktography on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Reddit, on YouTube. Same name everywhere.
All right. Well, I'll wrap it up then. And hey, man, it's been great talking to you, and I hope our paths cross really soon again.
I think they will, man.
All right. Thanks.